The hot wind swept across the barren landscape, picking up swirling vortexes of dust that choked the air. Dr. Myra Jones pulled her scarf up over her nose, squinting against the haze at the abandoned structures rising from the earth. She spotted her research facility in the distance, once a sleek, modern building, now reduced to a gutted skeleton. This place, like so many others, had been sacrificed. Myra trudged forward, memories surfacing of verdant trees, lush grasses, rain. The last sprinkles from the sky had fallen over a decade ago. She paused to take a small sip from her canteen, rationing every last drop. When she arrived at the facility entrance, she placed her hand on the security panel by instinct, then retracted it with a sigh. The scorched metal and dangling wires were lifeless, like so much else on this dying planet. She tugged the creaking door open manually and stepped inside the dim, dust-laden interior. This had been her life's work, she reflected, moving through the abandoned hydroponics lab and growth chambers. So much discovery about the planet's intricate biodiversity, so much possibility. All of it turned to ashes like the crops they once cultivated. If only they had acted sooner. Myra wound her way into the storage room, hoping some seed batches may have endured, however unlikely. As she shined her flashlight along the shelves, her breath caught. Tucked behind some containers was a tiny refrigeration unit with its light still blinking. She rushed over and wrenched it open, not daring to believe. Inside, nestled in molded casing, was a single seed pod labeled XP32 Zeleagnus. Her heart pounded. This was an experimental supergrowth seed, cultivated to thrive under extreme conditions. But the specimens had perished like all the rest, except somehow one survived. Myra's mind flooded with possibility, even as the logical part of herself warned not to get carried away. One seed could not possibly undo so much devastation. And yet, if she could find the optimum location, and if the atmospheric conditions allowed, Myra carefully pocketed the precious seed in her canteen pouch. For the first time in years, she felt the kindling of hope. She emerged from the facility to scan the hazy horizon, considering where best to plant. The most promising area was on the other side of the scorched expanse, past the abandoned cities and petrified forest. The soil chemistry might just work there. It would be a dangerous undertaking. That zone remained hotly contested for its last, meager water reserves. But Myra inhaled the searing air and resolve. She would find a way. This lone seed represented a small chance for regeneration, and she had to take it. Slinging her battered pack over her shoulder, Myra set her sights for the expanse. "Don't give up yet," she whispered, as if the planet could hear. A fierce optimism took root within as she began to walk westward, toward life or death. Meanwhile, the Earth's own consciousness stirred, observing silently. It would soon be revealed whether humanity had learned, whether this one who sought to heal could herself endure and choose rightly where new growth might flourish once more. Myra coughed as she trudged through the swirling gale, squinting against the needle-like sand that buffeted her face. The storms grew worse this time of year in the scorched expanse, as if the land itself rebelled against travelers. The thought reminded Myra of her brother Raj, who had disappeared in this wasteland 5 years before while on an expedition. She pushed down grief at the memory. There was no room for distraction. The Pet G canteen with its precious cargo bumped gently against her hip as she walked. It had been 36 hours since departing the lab, and she had not dared to rest yet. Making it out of the expanse was her only chance. Her gear and rations would not last more than several days in this relentless furnace. Myra paused behind a dune to drink sparingly and survey the bleached vista ahead. She activated her wrist module, checking the holographic map. The abandoned mega-city should only be 10 more miles northwest. Once, these towering metropolises had been the crown jewels of human civilization, masterworks of engineering and commerce and culture. Now they were crumbling necropolises, filled with nothing but ghosts, scavengers, and unnamed dangers. If she could just get past the city and reach the bordering forest, Myra hoped to find refuge for recovery. Pressing onward through the stinging wind, she traced a gloved hand over the canteen in reassurance. The seed sleeping within represented a promise that life could begin anew, that there might yet be redemption. A beeping suddenly emanated from Myra's wrist module, a proximity alert. She scanned the horizon and spotted them. 3 humanoid figures approaching rapidly from the west. Scavengers. Heart pounding, Myra bolted for cover behind a rocky overhang. Peering out, she watched the motley group searching, noses in the air like animals scenting prey. Myra gripped her plasma rifle and held motionless. After tense minutes, the scavengers moved on their way northeast. Breathing relief, Myra looked more closely at the wrist module. Its analysis tech was primitive now after years of wear. But the travel trajectory it displayed for those figures was alarming. They seemed to be heading straight for the abandoned city, same as her. Myra chewed her lip in consternation. Were they migrating, seeking refuge from storms? Or could they have gotten her sensor ping and realized someone was out here? The possibilities multiplied in her mind, each more chilling. One certainty overrode all. She could not fail in her mission. The entire future rested in her hands, quite literally. Gripping the canteen once more with resolve, Myra continued her northwest march, straight into the teeth of peril that waited amidst abandoned towers, and above watched the dreaming mind of the earth, curious, expectant, judging. Myra crept along crumbling alleyways, the ancient structures looming like the fossilized bones of giants. She kept to the shadows, hyper-alert for any sign of the scavengers. The city appeared deserted, yet intuition prickled the back of her neck. She was not alone here. She paused to consult the holographic map on her wrist again. The petrified forest was just on the northwest fringe. She plotted a zigzag course through the maze of deserted towers toward her goal. Pulse racing, Myra wondered if this city had once teemed with the footsteps of millions. Children laughing and merchants shouting and turbines humming. Wind echoed now through empty shells that sand was slowly reclaiming. How many had died slowly of thirst and famine when the resources ran out? She pressed onward, the weight of the canteen imprinting her hip. Skirting a deserted factory, Myra's boot crunched shards of glass and she stumbled, catching herself against a corroded wall with a gasp. Freeze. Barely daring to breathe, she scanned for movement. Had that sound given her away? A minute ticked by, then 2. Myra allowed herself a silent exhale of relief. As she turned to go, a voice suddenly called from the shadows behind, freezing her blood. "You move quiet, girl, but not quiet enough for Ripper." Myra turned slowly to see a tall, sinewy man, regarding her with arms crossed arrogantly. He had a plasma rifle strapped to his back. Eyes narrowing, Myra spoke evenly. "I don't want trouble, just passing through." The man cackled, the sound echoing eerily across stone. "Oh, we got plenty of trouble for you, botanist bitch." Myra's eyes widened. "Botanist? Does he know who I am?" Ripper grinned coldly, circling her. "We been watching you. Think one measly seed gonna fix this dump? Ain't nothing left to fix." He leaned in, teeth bared. "Now gimme that canteen 'fore I strip your corpse." Myra stepped back, mind racing wildly. She had no doubt he would kill her, but she could not surrender her precious cargo. With quivering hands, she slipped the canteen strap slowly from her shoulder, stalling, then suddenly grabbed her rifle and fired at Ripper's feet while throwing the canteen upwards. As the scavenger dove for cover cursing, Myra launched towards her soaring canteen in desperation. She managed to snatch it split seconds before hitting the ground hard, the wind knocked from her lungs. Gasping agony, she scrambled up and bolted down the nearest alleyway. Ripper's enraged roar echoing behind as boots pounded the pavement in pursuit. Myra's lungs burned as she sprinted through the maze of desolate streets, the thunder of Ripper's boots closing in behind. She darted left, down an alley, scanning wildly for some way to evade him. But he was cunning, and knew this urban labyrinth far better. Turning a corner, Myra spotted a recessed doorway and dove inside the intact lobby seeking cover, trying to still her ragged breaths. She could hear Ripper's footsteps prowling, his gravelly voice echoing. "I know you're close, botany bitch. I can smell your fear. Why you running when we could partner up? What you really trying to grow out there, huh? Something valuable." He paused, heavy boots scraping the pavement. "Last chance to share whatever you got in that canteen before things get ugly." Myra's mind raced, assessing options as she silently loaded her plasma rifle. She peered through a cracked window pane at the surrounding cityscape, desperate for escape. The monolithic high-rise towers offered no refuge or camouflage from this hunter who knew every crevice. Except, Myriadine noticed in the distance a dilapidated bridge extending between two buildings, precariously intact. If she could get there, cross over, and then blast the linkage behind her. Taking a deep breath, Myra burst from her hiding place and made a break for the bridge. She heard a shout, then the zap of Ripper's plasma bolt blistering the ground by her feet. Running like hell, Myra returned fire over her shoulder. She knew surprise was her only advantage. Reaching the far side of the bridge spanning a 40-story chasm, Myra frantically shot the connecting platform near the buildings on both sides, then squeezed along the intact middle section towards the far towered door. She felt the bridge destabilizing, heard Ripper's enraged yells. Suddenly, cables were snapping and metal groaning. Myra hugged the guide rails and inched along as her only escape route collapsed. With seconds to spare, she leapt and slid through the open tower doorway, right as the bridge fully gave way. Myra collapsed against a wall, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Canteen clenched tightly to her chest. She had narrowly escaped the worst, for now. But Ripper had her trail, and she still needed to traverse half the abandoned city before reaching the relative safety of the petrified forest. She allowed herself 1 minute to rest shaken limbs before pushing to her feet. The seed, humanity's last hope, depended on her alone making it out. Ironically, so did her nemesis Ripper, though he wished her dead. The planet's own strange consciousness watched in curiosity as the human drama continued to unfold. Myra awoke disoriented, blinking against searing sunlight. Where was she? Then her scattered thoughts coalesced. The seed, her flight through the abandoned city, collapsing afterward in this dusty room from exhaustion. She jolted upright. The canteen! Fumbling desperately, she exhaled relief discovering it still safely strapped over her shoulder. Myra gingerly pushed herself up, every muscle shrieking in protest. She had no idea how long she'd been unconscious. Peering through cracked blinds at the orange-hued sky, she guessed around 6 hours. It would be night soon, the perfect cover to traverse the remaining city blocks. Moving to a smashed window, Myra gazed upon the towering forest stretching to the northwest horizon. So close. Yet she knew Ripper could be tracking her this very moment, and she still had to navigate countless threats between here and those beckoning trees. Myra chewed her lip, lost in thought, before turning decisively from the window. She descended an emergency stairwell to street level and crept to a deserted cafe plaza bordering the forest route. Keeping watch for Ripper or other scavengers, Myra hoisted herself onto a rectangular planter wall filled with dead soil. Gazing down, she stroked the Pet G canteen almost lovingly. "You've made it so far already, little seed. Just a bit further." Myra carefully retrieved the seed pod wrapped in sterile gauze and held it aloft before placing it reverently within the soil. She swept up dust from cracks in the pavement to lightly cover it, then pulled a cryptobiotic gel pack from her pack to gently blanket atop, obscuring the spot. It would help retain any precious moisture until, if, it could sprout. Myra softly kissed her gloved fingers and touched them to the hidden seed. Just then, Myra heard a menacing laugh echo from behind. She whirled to see Ripper emerging from an alley with his rifle leveled, scarred face leering. "Thought you could lose me, botany bitch? Now gimme what I want before I fry your ass." Heart sinking, Myra stepped slowly down as he approached. She subtly moved between Ripper and her hidden treasure. The planet's last hope now delicately germinating, somehow still safe. For mere moments. As Myra backed against the planter wall gazing at her ruthless stalker, the Earth's strange consciousness looked on curiously. The final confrontation was unfolding, at last. Myra faced her stalker, Ripper. He slowly approached with rifle aimed, his cold eyes boring into her. "Last chance, bitch! Show me the goods!" With nowhere left to run, Myra closed her eyes, hoping Ripper would move on after she was dead without discovering what lay hidden behind her. Well, gonna beg for mercy at least. His gravelly voice seemed to echo from far away as Myra sank inward. So close. She had come so agonizingly close. Images flashed through her mind of everything lost to this ecological apocalypse. Peaceful forests and animals, children playing in green yards and blue water, right until the end of abundance when the wells ran dry. Myra's vision began to blur with fury. She reopened her eyes to glare at her tormentor. "You want my last seed? It's not for the likes of you." Expecting a plasma bolt, Myra was stunned when Ripper halted his approach a few steps away. His expression appeared thoughtful. Squinting, he rasped quietly, "Last seed, huh? Not just some goods to barter? It's alive?" Myra stared back warily. Could he possibly understand what was truly at stake here? Ripper paced in a restless circle, rifle lowered now. "Why'd you ever bring it to this shithole? Ain't nothing left growing here no more." He seemed genuinely perplexed. "What you think that seed gonna do?" Inhaling slowly to still her pounding heart, Myra replied, "That seed can regenerate this entire area. Spread life outward to places like the scorched expanse. Bring rain back, slowly. It could revitalize regions all over this world, halt extinction." Unsure why, she heard herself pleading, "Help me protect it. This planet rewarded people once. It could again." Ripper stared at the ground silently. Minutes stretched by until finally he met her eyes. "Maybe I just let you go plant it then. But when you get ghosted by someone else here, and it dies, that's your funeral." His face was unreadable. "Scorched expanse ain't worth saving nohow." He turned abruptly and strode away down the cracked street without a backward glance. Stunned, Myra watched until he disappeared from view. She sagged, trembling against the planter wall, adrenaline crashing hard. Had Ripper understood? Did he care? Or would he return to kill her later? Questions spinning, Myra peered up at the darkening, bruise-hued sky. Night was falling. It was time to flee into the forest's sheltering arms, and hope. As Myra gathered her pack and took one last look at the hidden seed pod's location, the strange consciousness of the earth silently opened. It observed as this compassionate human who might have abandoned a lost cause instead dared imagine redemption and nurtured fragile hope. Perhaps, after all, there were yet those among humanity who might hear the land's weakened voice and choose to heal instead of exploit. Perhaps there was yet reason to carry on and to one day awaken again.